Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé. Before the 90 days, Season 4, Tell All. Let's watch the show and see if anything of interest comes out of my face.
You know, I think I tried at least. When I give my heart, I give it big. I feel like I've always been there for him. Tom?
I think maybe Darcey needed more of me, and in me not being able to give that, it maybe changed her concept of how things were a little bit. And it became more dramatic, and it became upsetting for her part.
So it's hard to know exactly what he means by that, but it sounds like Tom is blaming her. He's saying she wanted more of me, and I couldn't give that to her, and so she got real dramatic. And then I had to walk away because she gets real crazy. I want to listen back again because it kind of sounds like that's what he's saying.
I think maybe Darcey needed more of me, and in me not being able to give that, it maybe changed her concept of how things were a little bit, and it became more dramatic, and it became upsetting for her part, and I just didn't know what to do.
And I didn't know what to do. It's not my fault. It's hard for me to know exactly what's going on for Tom, but my hypothesis has been that he wants to be a good boy, and he has some traumas around that, and he resents other people for not making him feel like he's a good boy. And I mean good boy in the inner boy sense. You know, we all have an inner child. And I wonder if he walks around trying to get approval, but also setting up situations where he's definitely going to garner disapproval. We tend to do that. Freud called it the repetition compulsion. We can call it projective identification. There's a lot of different terms for this. In that we will recreate relationships from our past in our present. It's for some of us, we grow up with difficult relationships in our childhood, in our teenage life, in our early adult life. And then because those were traumatic for us and difficult for us, we'll recreate them in our current life. For someone like Tom, it's possible, speculation, no idea about Tom, but I've seen people like him. When they were growing up, there was a lot of disapproval and criticism and distance, maybe with emotional withholding from him as a boy, from a boy. And you develop this complex around you're not good enough. And so you might develop these defenses of just like, well, I'm very special and other people are stupid, because that sustains at least some shred of self-esteem. But that relationship has been internalized of critical, powerful other, maybe even an older woman, and then you, the little boy who just can't seem to do anything right, but feels righteous because it's like, she's dramatic and I'm the normal one. And then through your romantic relationships, you might choose someone that comes across as like, oh, she might, this is all subconscious. She might come across as a little dramatic. And so that'll be an easy person for me to recreate this relationship with. I'll perturb the situation subconsciously so that she'll become dramatic in my eyes. And then I can feel vindicated. I can feel superior again because look how crazy she is. And it's not my fault. And I'm a good boy because there's something wrong with her. Even though the recreation of the relationship still makes me feel like I'm a bad boy because I'm getting disapproval. That's what we tend to do. Another recreation that's more commonly discussed is you are physically abused growing up as a child, and you internalize that relationship. And then later on in life, you find people subconsciously who are prone to physical violence and jealousy and control. You fall in love with that person. That person begins to control and abuse you. And you think, how did I get here? This is just like my relationship with my dad. I'm going to get out of that relationship. Next relationship, I'm not going to do that again. The next relationship, very similar. 3 years down the line, control, abuse. How did I get here again? Why is this happening? Because of unresolved trauma, unprocessed trauma, unprocessed self-esteem issues, schemas that involve thinking of yourself as not worthy, these kinds of things. It's not your fault that you're being abused. It's always the abuser's fault. But you did play a role in sniffing out that person subconsciously as a potential candidate for a recreation of a past relationship. So for Tom, maybe he is involved in that somehow. But at the surface, what we hear from him is, once again, it's Darcey's fault. This is what Tom has done from the beginning. Jesse did this too. Whenever there was a problem, it was always Darcey's fault. And she's a very easy target because she lacks self-esteem to some extent. And it's also easy for men to blame women. It's also a sexist thing. Men are taught that women are emotional. They're not logical. Men are logical. We don't get dramatic. We're more, we think more straight. Take it from me as a man. That's just like 100% not true. So there's no logic regarding gender in this way. Everyone is equally prone to illogic and logic and drama and not drama. It's just we label women's behavior as drama and men's behavior as justified or something. Not always. But anyway, my point is that Tom might have some of that gender socialization in him as well. I'm the put together one. I'm the English gentleman, and she's the dramatic, crazy American woman. And so self-esteem preserved on the surface, and everything is fine. But if we look at what he actually did, at least what they showed us on the show, was he posted a picture of, so he was still in a relationship with Darcey and asking her to go to Argentina with him, blah, blah, blah. Then post a picture of him in a clear romantic pose with another woman, posts it on Instagram, and Darcey got upset. And then he was a jerk face to her in that meeting at that cafe and, called out her, did she gain weight, he asked her, and all these other kinds of things. So if anything, he was the one who created the drama. He was the one who, from what it sounded like, cheated on her. He was the one who posted that picture. He was the one who met up with her and put her in a situation where he knew she was going to get hurt and angry. So that lack of self-awareness. Now, maybe Tom, in this tell-all, because sometimes it happens, a little bit of time goes by, and I actually have some faith in Tom that he can do this, to admit, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I've gone to therapy, and this has helped me. I don't know. Let's see what Tom says.
Yeah, you kind of just left her hanging.
So why didn't you tell me that you were with another girl 5 days after my birthday, or through whatever it is? My birthday's the 23rd of September. You were with her, Shannon, what, the 28th? Come on.
In fairness,
story doesn't add up, Tom.
I didn't feel like picking the phone up and saying, by the way, I'm sat in a lobby in Milan. I've just met someone. We're going to a show tonight.
Well, you should have. I'd rather have heard that than a bunch of other baloney bull. Come on,
I'm sorry.
man. Don't string me along.
Great. They're getting to the root of it here, which is, it's fine if you met another woman, but tell me about it as soon as possible so I don't have to find this picture on social media and wait several weeks to meet up in person for you to be a jerk in the way that you present it to me. Just break up. That's the whole thing here. This happens a lot to people. Tom is not the only one guilty of this problem in the world. Take it from me. I see this happen in my personal life. I see this happen in my professional life. It's one of those things that is labeled as this horrible behavior that is almost universal. I would venture to say that everyone past the age of 25 has done this to someone in some way, shape, or form. It is very difficult to break up with someone. It's really hard. You feel terrible. You feel ashamed. You feel guilty. You don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. It's easier not to. It's easier to just forge ahead with life and act like it'll just go away. Like, I don't know, what's a problem in your house? Like all of you in your house right now, you probably have like that doorknob that needs to be fixed, or that thing on the counter, or the backsplash tile that's coming loose. Every time you look at it, you're like, oh, that needs to be fixed. It's easier to walk past it and not deal with it than to turn and deal with it. And that's what a lot of people do, and that's what Tom did. It doesn't make it right. It's actually immoral to deceive people and do things that you know are going to hurt other people's feelings, which Tom did. Tom just said, well, I'm sorry. I wish you would expand on that a little bit. There's nothing wrong with doing something that's quite common. And then in this instance, for Tom, saying, you know what, Darcey, you're right. and twin sister and friend, you guys are right. I should have said something. I chickened out, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have told you right away that my feelings were waning, and I'm sorry for that too. But we were in a long-distance relationship, and it was just hard for me to hold on to that love. And that's my fault. It's not anyone else's fault. It's my fault. I chickened out because I was worried about hurting your feelings. But that's a stupid thing to think, because I hurt your feelings so much more by putting it off. And I'm sorry, and I take responsibility for that. There's nothing wrong with saying that, right? You're not going to be thrown off the plank into the alligator-infested waters, right? It's just admit it, just own it. But in order to do that, you need to have a self and self-worth and self-esteem to stand on. You need to be able to say, I'm a good person, and yet I did this one thing that's pretty bad. I'm generally pretty good, and I've been told by many people that I'm generally pretty good, and I've internalized those voices that I'm generally pretty good, but boy, did I do something pretty horrible in this moment. You can't say you did something horrible if you have nothing else to stand on. You'll just put that aside too. Well, I'll deal with that later. And my hypothesis for people like Tom is that they weren't given enough time to develop that self-worth so that they can own their feelings, take responsibility for them, and apologize. It also points to this lack of self, lack of differentiation with the behavior that he did, is that he seemingly throughout this, particularly this season, it was Darcey, then it was Shannon, then it was Darcey again, and we heard words like he's a chameleon, and other people are always barking at him and telling him what to do. This lack of knowing who he is and what he wants at the core. I don't know that. There are accusations that Tom is just trying to be on the show and isn't acting like a genuine person on the show anyway. So who knows? But if this is accurate, that would be an hypothesis that I would go off of, because it's hard to explain his behavior on the show otherwise.
Tom, did you put weight on?
I know.
Why did you say
Sometimes,
that?
because sometimes when you're hurt, you say things out of anger that are totally and utterly unacceptable. And I am deeply sorry to Darcey for having ever said something like that.
Well, guess what? Revenge body. Look.
Great. Tom, impressive. 2 thumbs up. Because when you're hurt, you say things that are awful, that you totally regret, and I totally regret saying that, and I'm sorry. Perfect. He could elaborate on that a little bit, put some more oomph into it. But for an Englishman, he's doing pretty well. No offense to people. Please don't comment below that I hate English people. I'm part English. Come on now. I always have to be careful about my little quips because I've been told that some people get offended. Anyway, but Tom, 2 thumbs up. So I didn't expect him to do that, but I was hoping he would, and that's great. That was my hypothesis in the moment when I first saw that video, was that because he looks so put together. He doesn't look hurt. He looks like an aloof bastard in that moment. But we knew enough about him to know that he wasn't a psychopath. So it's like, what was going on for him in that moment? Why would he say something so hurtful and so on camera nonetheless? Well, people do that when they're hurt. All of you out there, you have all said, I know this to be true, horrible things to people that you love when you were hurt. Some of you have said horrific things to your partners. I know that because I've seen it in my office. It's common. I've done it. We all do it. I don't want to have done it, and I've done it. When we're hurt, when we're scared, we're freaking out. Just because we're adults doesn't mean we can't act like children. Someone should put that on a t-shirt. And we all do it. And when we get hurt, man, the gloves come off and we just start swinging. And it feels right in the moment. It feels like the right thing to do. And then later, if you have a self to fall back on, which I think Tom maybe does have enough of a self to fall back on in this moment, you can say, oh, that was awful. I'm generally a good person, but boy, that was awful. Why did I do that? Well, I must have been really hurt. Now, I hope that Tom can elaborate on that more, because I think it'll help Darcey. Darcey's really focusing on, revenge body, instead of what I think Darcey really needs, because I've been following Darcey since season 1. I don't think I know anyone more well through the pandemic, aside from people in my family and Darcey, and Jesse and Tom by extension, I suppose. Darcey has this schema that she's worthless, that she's not lovable, and that men can't be trusted, and that she will always make bad choices, and that she made a terrible choice with Jesse. She made a terrible choice with Tom. And what I'm hoping is that she can really hear Tom in this moment and say, like, I'm sorry, I was hurt. And when I get hurt, I do stupid things. And it's totally not justified. Because I think that'll help Darcey to, 1, know that she is worth it. 2, that she didn't choose terribly. Tom wasn't a terrible partner. I don't know how compatible they were, but he wasn't a terrible choice to try out dating. And 3, that she can affect other people. I don't know how well Darcey knows that she can affect other people and really hurt their feelings. She gives the impression in her demeanor, in her arguments, that she feels like men are strong and that she's weak. And it's an important lesson to learn for all of us, that we can hurt other people. I've met people personally and professionally who have yet to learn that they can hurt other people. It's something that you learn in while growing up. There's a certain developmental stage you go through where you start to learn, oh, I can hurt my parents' feelings. They aren't invincible gods. They can be hurt. That's weird. So I have that power. And it takes a normal development and a normal parent-child attunement situation that's uncomplicated by outside forces or inside forces, so that you can learn that important lesson, that you have that power. And I don't know if Darcey really gets that. I think she thinks that she's the weak when other people are strong. She can't hurt other people's feelings. So I hope that she can really hear him in this moment.
You kind of get a gut feeling like something's not right. And I'm thinking, wow, he obviously is probably coming to break up, because I already know he's with some other girl.
In fairness, when I came to meet you in New York, I didn't know what I wanted.
Oh, so you still kind of left me hanging. So
No, I wasn't leaving you hanging. No, what I want, I didn't know what I wanted. I really didn't. Did I want to be in a relationship where we argue like this? Not necessarily. I came to meet you, and it wasn't the best of experiences for either of us.
So that's very interesting. I'm glad we're getting a bit of insight into his thinking. And I think I might have suspected this, is that when they met in New York in the cafe, he wasn't sure about breaking up with Darcey yet. That he had met Shannon, but he wasn't sure about Shannon. He really did have feelings for Darcey, and he wanted to meet up and maybe see if it felt good, so that he could say to Shannon, no, I'm actually with someone else, or I don't know, who knows. But that's what he's saying. I think it's possible. But look at the way if that is true, look at the way he engineered that conversation. Go back and watch it. Maybe they'll show clips from it. Oh, I think they already did. Anyway, he sat down and was very aloof and didn't really say much. And eventually, through very awkward small talk, Darcey eventually says, so are you going to talk about it or what? Because I saw this picture. What are you talking about? You and a woman. Yeah, so what? What do you mean, so what? Darcey's like, so what? What do you mean, so what? I saw you. Yeah, I was with this other woman. Well, and then obviously Darcey gets hurt and she escalates, and then she starts to walk out, and then he gets hurt and he says the nasty things. So if he truly was in that meeting to see if him and Darcey were going to work out, why would he do that? Well, if he's a psychopath, then he would do what I think a lot of people, the hypothesis would be, what a lot of people come to on the internet anyway is just like he's trying to gaslight her. He is an evil person. He's trying to trick her. He's a terrible human being. Without assessing him, I don't know that, but that's pretty rare. It's a very rare personality. It's much more likely, given what we've seen in all of his behavior, that he came into that actually wanting to connect. Part of him wanted to connect with Darcey in that moment. But because of his traumas, he might not have been able to extend himself into vulnerability because he detected right away that she was hostile to him. She had every right to be hostile. She saw a picture of him with another woman online. And that hurt him. And I think I remember thinking that when I was watching it, that you remember he tried to kiss her and she's like, no, I don't want to kiss. And that hurt him. And then he went into defense mode and he wasn't going to reveal much vulnerability or reach out to her because he was afraid. But he wasn't also going to move away because he also wanted her to chase him or something. And when that didn't happen, and then she pointed out the picture, then it all just looked like he was a deer in headlights the whole time. And why would you do that? Well, because if you don't really know who you are and you don't have a strong base to stand on, you can't really venture out. You can't really extend yourself into vulnerability in a safe way. So I hope that's making sense. It's making sense in my mind. So does it make sense to you? Comment below. Let me know what you think.
Did you have that meeting strictly to break up with her?
No, didn't.
What was the purpose?
The purpose was I wanted to go and see Darcey and figure out how I felt about certain things. And part of me was like, if I turn up and she's really a certain way, then it's good for me to move on and go and be somewhere else. And I think part of me really wanted her to just go, I know what you've done. I don't want you to be doing that. I want you to be with me. And I think if she'd have said something along the lines of that, then maybe we'd still be together now. And that's in my mind. That's
so
in my
if
mind.
If the meeting...
Okay, so I think he redeemed himself at the end there by saying, implying that was what was in my mind. I don't know if it makes any sense because it doesn't make any sense, Tom. You don't cheat on your girlfriend, meet up with her, and hope that she chases you. And that's that avoidant personality. That's that avoidant attachment style. I don't know. But when you grow up and you develop an avoidant attachment style, you learn that don't extend yourself into vulnerability. Never be vulnerable. Never tell anyone how you feel. Never even notice how you feel. And definitely don't chase people. Because if you chase, that's vulnerable and you can get rejected. Never chase. First sign, reject. And even when you're in a relationship, always make sure you're a little bit away so that they have to chase you. Because if you stop, then that admits that you need something, and you do not want to admit that because in the past you were rejected or neglected in a horrible way, and you want to avoid that. And so he sits down, so he cheats on her in a sense, sits down and says, okay, I hope she chases me. That is a very avoidant thing to do. There's a part of him, it sounds like, he was like, I wanted her to chase me. I wanted that attachment. I wanted that validation that I mattered. And then at the end, as he's saying this right now, he says, that was what was in my head. Again, I think what he's saying is, I know it sounds stupid, but that was what was in my head genuinely.
Does Shannon know you were possibly going to continue your relationship with Darcey?
No, of course not.
Sounds like a two-timer.
I can't. Guys, were you ever in love? Was there ever love here?
I was in love with her. I was. And I'm not going to deny that because it'd be quite easy to say I'm not and pretend that it wasn't. But I did love her very, very much.
So a lot of people, including Darcey, are going to question that. How could you be in love and do something like that? People do it all the time. I'm telling you. It is not an indication of not being in love. You could call it the issue of the avoidance. You could call it an issue of immaturity. You could call it an issue of undifferentiation. You could call it an issue of repetition compulsion and recreating relationships from your past and your present. There's a lot of different conceptualizations of it. But it's totally possible that Tom very much did love Darcey and very much did want her to chase him. And when she didn't chase him, then that's another function of that kind of setup is for the avoidant person, not only do they want to be chased, but they also have a really hard time breaking up because the breakup requires you to be forward and requires you to be vulnerable to some extent because you have to reveal how you're feeling. If you're pretty avoidant, it's so much easier to perturb the other person with your distance, have them go crazy, and then go, see, I'm leaving because of you. Tom seemed to exhibit that. And I wonder if he heard me talk, he might agree with me. Because I feel like in his talk, he's revealing a little bit of self-awareness as he apologizes and says, well, that was what was in my head. And what he just said there is like, yeah, I did love her. It'd be easy for me to say I didn't. And it might, because I think what he's saying is I could protect myself by saying I don't love her. But I did love her. I really did. So I wonder, Tom, if you're watching out there, DM me, or I don't know how you contact people these days, but let me know. If any of the people are watching, I'm always curious. I have a suspicion that there's a lot more nuance to these no, I don't have a suspicion. I know for a fact that there's a lot more nuance to these people, Tom, Darcey, and all the others, than what I'm talking about, of course. And I'm probably only right half the time, if that. But I am so invested in this show and in my hypotheses that I would love to talk with these people. I talked with Ash a little bit, and I got a little bit of more information about his real life and getting better picture of the conceptualization. And so it's really a dream of mine to talk to all these people. And even if it's off the record, like with Ash, it was completely off the record. I'll never talk about what we talked about. And, it wasn't recorded or anything. And so maybe one day I'll talk to Darcey and Tom.
I'm sorry, but I just saw a side of Tom that it makes me feel like he's an untrustworthy person. And
In fairness, I'm not willing to continue talking while she's here.
Well, who's here? Who?
Avery.
Why?
Because I have an issue with her, so I prefer not to speak to Avery. We don't need to talk about what the issue is. It's irrelevant.
Well, she has a voice. Let her talk.
So I'm quite happy not to continue this conversation. So it's up to you.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but it's so weird to see these couples cross-talking where now Tom and Avery have a thing because you consider them just to be so separate in these separate worlds. It's like Luke Skywalker and Captain Kirk having a conversation or something.
I don't even know. I have no idea what's going on here.
I'm not interested in talking. Thank you. Goodbye.
Tom, what happened?
Nothing. I'm not interested in talking about it.
Yes.
You know something? This is complete and utter bull.
So if I was to take a guess, I would say that Tom is having a severe shame response right now, and he is wanting to avoid. It sounds like he's about to turn off his camera, and he's just trying to shut it down because of something he feels ashamed of. That's what it feels like to me.
Like, seriously.
Okay, we just lost Tom. Tomorrow night. Before the 90 days, the couples.
All right, well, I guess that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle, in which we followed Darcey and Tom on 90 Day Fiancé. Tune in next time when we continue with the tell-all. Let's see what happens next. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.